Welcome to CivilNet. I have a very special and interesting guest here in our studio today, Greg Norberg-Bohm. He is the coordinator of the Men's Initiative, and we're going to find out what that is all about. Craig, thank you for joining us.
You're more than welcome. It's a delight.
I've been looking into sort of the kind of work that you're doing, and you're from the United States.
I am, that's right.
First time in Armenia, so welcome.
Thank you.
And you have been, for the last, almost 4 decades, working in something called men's prevention work, engaging men in violence prevention.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. It started out in thinking about working with men who are offenders of violence against women, mostly in intimate personal relationships, but not necessarily. And I was involved in thinking about how do you provide counseling to men who have been violent and would like to, and been left their families and would like to return to their families. So that was a starting place back in the 70s and early 80s. And we called it in the United States batterers intervention. We're working with men who batter. And over the years, that's expanded to all sexualities and genders and perspectives, so that the counseling dimension of this is quite rich now. And so it's issues between men, issues between men and women, and so on. But that was the beginning. It's a revolving door.
How so?
Emergency services see people coming all the time, and they see repeat people come in again, and they don't see it stop. They save individual lives, and they help people, and it's a necessary thing, but the problem doesn't go away. The beds are full, like the emergency service, maybe domestic violence places to go to hide from an offender, that this problem continues. And so people say, well, how do you stop it? It's a big and difficult question. How do you actually stop it?
Because the perception is that it's a cyclical thing.
That's right.
That when a young boy sees his father battering his mother or his significant partner,
learn that it's okay, or that's how to be.
And learn that that's okay. And then that child grows up and then repeats the pattern of the father. Is it possible to break that pattern? Or is it?
Well, it certainly is. At least I'm optimistic. So the program I'm working on now is how we call it going upstream to the source. And what's the source of this? Is a creative enterprise, and we're thinking particularly about what are the aspects of masculinity and manhood that are solutions to this. How can we invite men to think of a conversation about this? And many men care about women in their lives. They may be that they don't want to see this happening to their daughters. They don't want to see this happening to their mothers or sisters. They care about this, and their invitation, they haven't had an invitation to be part of the solution before.
And be part of the conversation even. It's always been about a woman thing, right?
That's right. So it's how do you broaden the conversation so men's stories are part of it. So that's what we're doing. So I have a program in Massachusetts that is, we have 90+ local organizations participating in the campaign, doing local outreach to men and boys to have these conversations. We have a role of the individual male, we call it the ambassador, and the ambassador to the campaign then reaches out to his friends and colleagues to have the conversation. And
are they open to that conversation?
They are. There's a range. We call it readiness, and I mean, I can't pretend to know what it's entirely like here in Armenia. There's going to be some readiness, but the readiness is, on the one hand, I don't want to talk about this. In fact, I'm trouble. There's trouble. Then there's people who, I'm not interested, not paying any attention.
It's not my problem.
That's right. Then there's a group who would help if asked.
If asked.
They're good.
So maybe we haven't asked.
Mostly.
Right.
The invitation isn't there. And then there's certainly people like myself who would say leadership. And when I started in this particular line of work about 10 years ago, it was find the other leaders like myself, so that we don't feel like we're alone. Right. So it's only been about 10 years.
And is there a stigma?
There's stigma
with other men, for example, in your own life, in your own social circle.
There is. I mean, if you think about it, if this is about manhood and being a strong man, and it's not being a strong man to give this up. To be abusive is to giving up being abusive. If that means not being a man, there's a stigma in that. Other men look down, and so we're wanting to basically celebrate this manhood that's actually quite safe and equitable. We don't have a problem with strength. Strength is a good thing. Athleticism, it's a good thing. Being to endure difficult jobs, these are good things. And then to be, we're in a world that's changing, where people need 2 incomes in a household. It's not traditional anymore. People need to cooperate to get the daily work done. And so that's the kind of thing. And I find, at least where I live, there are men who want this change. And so those are the men I'm working with.
Yeah, I would presume, and as a journalist, we don't often like to presume or assume, but we assume that there are hopefully a majority of men who are against this kind of violence.
We think that's true.
Sure, but then to find within that majority who are against it, those men who are willing to speak about it, and so that it doesn't affect their perceptions of manhood, especially in more macho societies and more conservative societies.
Sure. We think about it, our access points are about roles. And so we have programs for dads, encouraging their caring and nurturing side, and being the Men Care campaign, which is international. There's a group called menengage.org that I participate in that's working around the world encouraging men and caring relationships is one of the campaigns. So that's an angle. The other is coaching and mentorship, that men want to help kids do well and be a role model to those kids. And so those folks who are influencers of children we can work with. So we have programs for the men in those roles.
It's incredible, and I would be really curious to see if we could, through your assistance here, see if we could try it out here in Armenia to see, because
it's as simple as inviting a conversation, talking about, because there's a project called the Men's Story Project that's in the U.S. and in some other countries that is about having men tell their whole stories, and then look in that for the elements of solution. Like, think about where that is, and it's going to take all of us to make this kind of a change. And so we do want to welcome male experience to think in terms of a solution. It's also,
the thing that continually, I don't know what the word is, continually bothers or haunts me is that in more developed societies, where there is more tolerance and openness, we would hope,
equity,
where there is awareness about domestic violence, where women do have services.
This emergency, there's help.
For assistance. The prevalence of domestic violence, that it continues, boggles the imagination.
No, that's true, and that's why we're thinking about what are the upstream sources, how can we address things, and we tend to think of it in terms of social norms. If it's just the way it's supposed to be, that's why people think.
Boys will be boys, and this is
boys will be boys.
Which we hear,
you're kind of lost, if you say, and it's related to stop crying, grow up, be a man.
Right.
It's in that mix of thinking that it leads to, and so if there's something called expectation of service, like my sense of self is based upon you taking care, you doing what I say. That kind of authority, and so these are called social norms, and so there are men who feel kind of oppressed by that. That's not who they want to be, but then they get criticism from other men, and so they would like to talk about this. So there's some.
So this is a whole shift of sort of gender roles and perceptions and stereotypes.
It's about stereotypes, certainly. Yeah, and I think men there's a tough position of trying to always perform. So we're looking for ways to alleviate that and to bring men into the solutions. And there's something in between from the solution to the intervention is something called secondary. And secondary is helping when people are at risk. The model in the US is called the bystander approach. And so you think about everyone as an active bystander, that you're not treating you as the victim, and I'm not treating you as an offender. I'm treating you as a concerned citizen who can be of some help. And the training for bystanders is becoming more and more of a model for college campuses and for schools and for cities and towns. So this is training to go deeper and to think about, well, if I hear the neighbors in trouble, what am I supposed to do? Do I get in the middle of it, which could be dangerous, or do I ignore it, which lets it go on? So what are the alternatives? And that's what the training is about.
Okay. So as I said, you come from a society that has the awareness.
That is talking about this.
That's talking about it. In Armenia, 15, 20 years ago, we weren't talking about it so much. Today we are talking about it. And yet there's a long journey.
There's a long road ahead, yeah.
One of the problems that we face in Armenia, aside from the cultural stereotypes and the traditions, is the fact that we don't have a law on domestic violence in the country, which is something that many organizations in Armenia have been fighting for years.
It's been worked on. You're wanting one.
Absolutely. How important do you think it is to have a law on domestic violence within the penal code, so that?
Yeah, I think it's necessary. There's 4 strong levels where you operate to make change, from the individual to the society. In between are relationships and community, and this is a society level intervention. You make it, it's against the law, and we train and empower the authorities to respond. Those are interventions, challenges, and it makes a point saying this needs to change. So people think that this needs to change. And that's why you work not only with the laws, but you talk with the religious institutions as well about what they teach. And you had to have the conversation everywhere. Right. But I think it's necessary. Right. It's a societal level as well as individual level.
Okay. It's fascinating work that you're doing, and very inspirational to see, because sometimes in Armenia, as I said, we talk amongst the women and we don't engage the men. Yes. As an example, gender-based abortions are very, very high in Armenia.
Sex-selective?
Sex-selective abortions. And here at CivilNet, we did a program with men, some of them our own staff, talking about their daughters. So we had 5 men talking about how their daughters have impacted their lives, to show the value. Can you imagine showing the value
of having daughters?
Of having a daughter. And then there was other initiatives taken by their organizations, and we've seen in Armenia this huge outpouring from men saying that, yes, of course my daughter is an extreme value, is valuable to me, to my family, to society, to this country.
Well, that's exactly the kind of conversation we're looking to have. That's part of the solution, those conversations. That men and daughters, fathers and daughters,
Fathers and daughters. Well, Craig, thank you so much for this illuminating conversation, for all the work that you're doing, and hopefully you will embark on some projects here in Armenia. I know you're going to be having a speech at the American University of Armenia about this issue, and hopefully it will instigate a conversation that we need to have here.
At least,
Well, we need to start somewhere.
That's right, and then projects grow from there.
There you go. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'd like to remind our viewers that my guest was Craig Norberg-Bohm. He is a coordinator of the Men's Initiative working on prevention of violence among men. Keep following CivilNet.